So recently I've been browsing my old Steam games list and one of them caught my attention. Remember New World? Remember that game we all played for about 2 weeks like a year ago? Well, for those of you who don't remember, New World was Amazon's first attempt at creating an MMORPG and it did not go well. The game had a good structure, great ideas, and a promise of some great PvP content, but most people never got to experience it. Tons of server issues, bugs and glitches, lack of content, and the reuse and repetition of any content that did make it in kinda got in the way of playing. After a small bit of time with the game, players had already identified ways to duplicate items which crashed the economy in an economy-based game. They found that they could glitch in PvP with invulnerability frames, and that the hatchet had some sort of rage damage buff that would persist indefinitely in stack or something like that. I don't remember too much of that one. But anyway, the real nail in the coffin was that all of these issues I just mentioned could be experienced within the first 10 to 25 levels of a 60-level game. There were far more issues with the higher levels, but for this quick video I want to focus on the first 25 levels because I went ahead and downloaded the PTR this week to see what AGS had been working on. It's been a year, so if you can imagine, there are plenty of changes since launch. New World has made quite a bit of progress since then. In addition to bug fixes, a lot more content has been added to the game. I would say some of the big things are the Void Gauntlet and the Blunderbuss. You can learn how to play instruments and pick up music sheets around the world. There are modifiers that you can add to dungeons to make them harder and drop more loot. But overall, the experience is basically the same, especially while you level. You follow a single disjointed quest line that makes you travel over the map, you join a faction that gives you randomly generated kill or gather X quests, and check the town board for more of the same. There's not a lot of story that can be followed unless you want to read info cards that are littered around the world. And for the most part, you don't really care too much because the quests are more of a means to an end, rather than being engaging content. So why am I bringing this up now? Well, on the PTR currently is an entire overhaul to the level 1 through 25 experience. From the minute you wash up on the shores of the island to your journey out of the beginner zones, the game now gives you a purpose. Before I get too far with my own thoughts though, I'll bring up the PTR notes so that we know exactly what's coming. Major updates: a revamped starting experience giving an answer to player feedback on quest variety, AI variety, streamlined questing with less running back and forth, and improved storytelling. New World now has a central storyline that takes players through each region of the game, unlocking side content as you go. Instead of just the kill or gather X quests, New World has tracking and traversal challenges, puzzles that you need to solve, and dynamic events that trigger when you enter a specific location. The main quest line onboards new players and focuses on 2 unique storylines depending on where you wake up: Monarch Bluffs or Windsward. Monarch Bluffs has been remodeled to have an Arthurian style as players will complete a quest line based on the legend of King Arthur. Windsward has a quest line that follows the story of the sorceress Medea, a vengeful Greek legend who brings about disease and famine as a form of punishment to the inhabitants of the land. Both quest lines eventually converge on the hermit Jonas, who starts the player on the familiar path to becoming a soul warden, but even the hermit has been updated to move along with you as you complete the quest, so that you don't have to travel back and forth while he sits in the river fishing all day. Last but not least, we have a new weapon, the Great Sword, which in my opinion may be the best weapon in the game so far. It has the Onslaught tree, which gives you heavy offensive power, and the Defiance tree, which excels at aggressive defense that can survive and deal damage as a tanky brawler. Most importantly, it's big and it looks cool and you carry and run with it like an anime character. These are huge changes, by the way. When AGS says that they've revamped the new player experience, they updated pretty much everything. The first thing you'll notice when you start the game now is a new emphasis on the story. You have a new voice in your head that shouts at you every so often when you complete objectives in the main quest. The main quest changes the tutorial to have a quest flow that leads in a circle around the area, and has you dealing with lost pirates and corrupted souls in each of the different shipwrecks. But a more subtle change is the fact that most, if not every weapon, is available in the starting area. You can pick them up from the ground or find them in weapon chests or get them from enemies. A new player can test out each weapon and start their journey with whatever weapon they want. This is huge and streamlines the early levels where you're basically testing out every single weapon to see what sticks before choosing what you'll build going into the main game. I may be getting way too excited about that. It's a small change, yeah, but it's impactful, and that's what I like to see. Overall, the voice in your head, the focus on delivering a story, the new voice lines that sound great with the new characters, all of these add up to deliver a worthwhile experience to a new player. But it doesn't stop there, because then you go to a nearby settlement to start the main quest for the zone. For my first character, I did the Medea quest in Windsward, so that's what all the footage will be from. I won't spoil anything, but for these quests you're led into locations around the zone that actually feel like they have meaning now. If you've played New World before, you'll notice that some of these areas are updated versions of old areas that you've already played through. Each quest has been updated to be more engaging, Like at certain points you have to ruin dive and power up a crystal using a rune system that acts like a password. At one point you even have to do a jumping puzzle to reach the crystal power station. Even joining a faction has changed since I played last, where now you have a small initiation quest line before you can join the faction. I joined the Covenant faction, and I got to do a quest to purge some undead miscreants that have been plaguing the organization and the land around its headquarters. I don't want to bore you by praising the same thing over and over again, so I'll stop there and let you make your own opinions on the New World New Player Experience revamp. The update comes out in October, and this one you may want to try out. New World as a whole has a long way to go to make it a top 5 MMORPG, but I love that AGS is trying to make their game work, not just killing it and starting over. The PTR was actually more fun to come back to than the live server, so that's saying something about this new update. This new player experience update is also being released with all the new endgame updates coming with the Brimstone Sands area, which would take its own video to cover. New World is making moves now, and I for one am excited to see them trying. I obviously did not refund my money from the fiasco that was their launch, so I'm rooting for them. The last thing I want to talk about before I end the video though is how bad it looks for the game to have shipped without all of this content. It took an entire year for these changes to be put in the game, and if you look at any other MMORPG in the market today, these are basic, industry standard features. Yes, it's amazing that New World took the L at launch and still stuck with it, but whose idea was it for them to launch in the first place? Could Daddy Bezos not wait until the game actually had content? We could all clap our hands for AGS and say, wow, this is great stuff, but it will always come with the caveat that the game was, to put it nicely, below average from the start. I would have loved to imagine a world where this next update was the base game. What if New World was actually a competitive MMORPG? The profession system, the crafting UI, and the marketplace are still some of the best I've seen. I love the open world PvP and the idea of faction wars over an open world castle. I love the player housing system and how you could find trophies in the world to bring back to your house. Can you imagine if New World was able to focus on improving these unique gameplay features instead of having to go back and rebuild basic MMORPG features for an entire year? No game is perfect, but if you don't have the basic building blocks as a solid foundation, you apparently risk losing half your player base in a month. The reality is, New World should have shipped with this experience, or something like it. Especially the new player experience. Levels 1 to 25 in New World are extremely important. Not only do they take a good amount of time, but it sets up the entire game for the player. What weapon do I want to use? What professions do I want to master? What faction do I want to join? Not to mention your first dungeon experience in understanding the story. If the player is bored by all of this in the first 25 levels, what chance is there that they'll stick any further? Really, how many of you New World players actually made it past level 30 when you first tried the game? I think going forward, New World is going to have to decide what type of game it's going to be. Is it a PvP focused game or PvE? Theme park or sandbox? Maybe it's a mix. This update specifically is more PvE questing focused, but that doesn't mean that every update has to be, so I'm curious to see where AGS will take the game. If any of you have tried out this new player experience or have thoughts on what I outlined, let me know in the comments. But for now, I'm going to go play with my greatsword. But most importantly, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you liked it and subscribe for more content. I hope you enjoy your New World testing, and I can't wait to see what we talk about next.